All right. Hello, everyone. I figure I should probably get started. Hello, for those who don't know me, my name is Lindsay Jane, and this is the Solarpunk stream. It's connected to my YouTube channel, the Solarpunk Scene. And today we are going to be getting into part 3 of Gilded Shadows. So for those who may not have seen it up until this point, our main character has found out that she has telekinetic powers and is currently doing all sorts of different struggles with trying to navigate all sorts of different factions. All right, so let's get into this. So, please let me know if there's any problems that are coming through on the side of you guys, and I will do my best to go and fix it. Alright. There we go. Talks. Alright. My dream was crystal clear for a split second before it faded into nothing, and I was left staring at a blank ceiling. From above me, I heard the steady hum of medical equipment, soft beeps, the gurgle of an IV. Trying to sit up was not a good idea. The moment I moved, a wave of dizziness hit me, bringing nausea with it. I put a hand to my face, swallowing hard to quell the rolling queasiness in my stomach. My eyes also felt strange. Part of my mind was making some attempt at working out where I was, but the rest of me was just trying not to vomit. A shuffle of movement nearby alerted me that someone was there. They stood the moment I turned, moving into my line of sight. As soon as I saw him, everything came flooding back. Being grabbed off the street, the vivarium where the woman attacked us, the man in the dark corridor, Jack. This has to be Core Solaris. Alright, what is Core Solaris? Core Solaris, the headquarters of Endgame. It's a massive complex located in a neutral territory between New Albion and CERN. Core Solaris lies at the center of a domed city called Brazil. It is not just a single tower, but a sprawling complex where the members of Endgame live, train, and work. A large tower dominates the skyline of Brazil and is the largest complex in the city, with much of the population living there or working there. Alright. I managed to struggle into a sitting position. Ari watched me wordlessly, his body tense. You shouldn't try to move yet. There was so much I wanted to ask. How long I'd been asleep, if I was really at their headquarters, what had happened while I was unconscious. My thoughts were too jumbled for me to form coherent sentences. Not going to leap up and elbow anyone in the head this time? Until he spoke, I hadn't even realized Caleb was standing near the door, arms crossed over his chest. Glaring. What does he look so mad about? Wait. It took a moment for my brain to catch up to what he said. Elbowing someone in the head? The word came out as a hoarse croak. My mouth was so dry. Trying to speak felt like coughing up sand. Ari paced around the bed to the table on my other side. I watched him with bleary eyes as he poured water from a carafe I hadn't noticed earlier. Drink this. You've been in and out of consciousness for several days. He lifted the cup to my mouth to help me drink. What? Several days? Excuse me. I covered Ari's hands with mine, but it didn't take the cup from him when I realized how much I was shaking. Better? I nodded, wiping my face. Where am I? I still sounded hoarse, but at least I got the words out this time. You're at the Cor Solaris, in our medical ward. Why do I feel like I was hit by a cargo transport? Because you're recovering from a rather severe case of psi fatigue, presumably. And what Caleb said about... Oh, and what was Caleb saying about elbowing someone in the head? Do you not recall when you woke and tried to escape? No. The last thing I remembered was being in that alley with the woman in white. How convenient. What was that supposed to mean? What reason would I have to lie about that? Considering who you elbowed in the head, I can think of a few reasons, actually. I don't even know who I supposedly elbowed in the head. Caleb, if you intend to antagonize her, perhaps it would be best if you leave. Caleb scowled at Ari, but to my surprise, did turn and leave. Ari sighed and returned to where he'd been sitting when I woke up. I squinted after Caleb, blinking my eyes rapidly a few times to clear them. Passing a hand over my face, I glanced Ari's way. Is angry his natural state, or does he just hate me in particular? Neither one. Everyone has been on edge since your attempted escape. In Caleb's case, on edge typically manifests as anger. It's not personal. What in the world did I do to have everyone on edge? You nearly concussed Magnus Ulrich, the highest-ranked Esper in Endgame, by elbowing him in the head while delirious. Yeah, that would do it. I was sort of hoping I'd elbowed Caleb in the head. Then you fled through the corridors and barricaded yourself into an empty room. Right. And you spent the next half hour throwing glass stars at anyone who attempted to enter. Anything else? There's something else, isn't there? I was eventually able to enter the room and relocate you back to your bed. However, since then you've had several surges of unstable psi energy. Your previous room was badly damaged along with some medical equipment. Was anyone hurt? Nothing serious, only mild abrasions. Thank goodness. The uncontrolled power surging was likely brought on by the stress of your attempted escape. They attempted to place a psi inhibitor on you for your own safety, as you were increasing your fatigue symptoms. Psi inhibitor. A device that is able to cancel out psi or suppress psi waves, rendering a person's psi unusable. There are variations in how they work as well as whether they weaken or fully suppress psi. Alright. But it had no effect on your abilities. That's interesting. An Esper immune to psi inhibitors is uncharted territory for Endgame, hence everyone is on edge. It sounds like I caused quite a lot of problems. It was more worrying than inconvenient. For a while, I believe they feared they would lose you. Wow, that bad? Exactly how long have I been here? 4 days. I sank back onto the bed, trying to take that in. 4 days. This psi fatigue thing seemed pretty serious. To be honest, I didn't know much about it, though the name made it obvious what it was. Your condition has stabilized considerably in the last 40 hours. The incident 4 days ago caused a swell in your psi development similar to what we see in some children when their psi first emerges. If the growth occurs too quickly, we refer to it as a power surge. It's a relatively common phenomenon. It can also occur in adults during times of emotional stress. There's no need for concern. Sounds more like it's everyone else that's concerned. You produced one of the largest psi bursts any of us have ever seen, for your abilities to verge on spiraling out of control was disconcerting. Our doctors are not accustomed to dealing with uncontrollable psi at this strength. While children lack control, their psi is also less developed. Even queen ranks? Yes, the previous queen learned to contain her abilities before they neared your current level. I rubbed my forehead again, trying to parse all that information. What happened to all the people who were, chasing and attacking us? If you're concerned about your safety, I assure you none of them will be able to reach you here. Endgame headquarters, huh? I want to get up and look around. I don't believe that's wise. You can always have a look when you've recovered more. I want to look around now. What's the problem with that? Throwing the blanket back, I tried to swing my legs over the side of the bed. Ari put his hands on my shoulders to stop me. Morgan, you need to rest. All right, we have 3 choices. Ask him to please let you go. Cautious. Oh no, we have 2 choices. Stay where you are for now. Any thoughts from people on which ones we should do? I'm personally leaning towards stay where you are for now. She's gone through quite a bit. Alright. Alright, let's go for stay where you are for now. I resisted the urge to push his hands away and stayed where I was, for the time being. Elbowing someone in the head for another daring escape attempt probably wasn't the best idea. So I'd have to convince him. I think I'm feeling well enough for a walk. Perhaps, but you only recently awoke. I don't believe it's wise to get out of bed yet. I just want to see where I am. I've told you where you are. Okay, but you also kidnapped me. That puts a small dent in your credibility. We apprehended you as per our orders. I want to see it with my own eyes. Ari didn't look convinced, but I didn't back down this time. I'm certain Dr. Sasaki. Yes, I'm certain Dr. Sasaki will complain if he learns you've left your room. I'll listen to his complaints then. I will also have to listen to them, you realize. Am I a prisoner here? Of course not, but you are a patient. If I'm not a prisoner, then I want to get up and look around. He crossed his arms, resting the tip of 2 fingers against his temple. For a long time, he watched me tapping the side of his face. When he didn't speak again, I made another attempt to stand. Ari didn't stop me this time, but hovered nearby as if worried I would fall. Or maybe tried to bolt out the door. I'm not going to run away again, you know. I'm not concerned about that. I suppose he wouldn't be, considering he could teleport. Then again, I could too. Sometimes. Can you please stop hovering? Very well, I'll allow this. But we will not go far, and I'll stay with you the entire time. Dr. Sasaki will complain regardless, but my presence will hopefully divert his lecture away from you. He left my side and went to a nearby cabinet, from which he pulled out some kind of bundle. What's that? I assume you would prefer to wear something other than a medical gown? I glanced down at myself, not having realized I was wearing one, though it made sense, of course. I suppose so. Ari handed me the clothes, then nodded and stepped outside to allow me to dress. Alone for the first time since I woke up, I finally just took a moment to breathe and get my bearings again. It all happened. Some memories were a little hazy, but it was all real. That was difficult to grasp. A few days ago, my world was school and exams. Now it was one of espers and being chased and shot at. How does that happen? What am I supposed to do now? I set 2 fingers against one of my eyes. No amount of rubbing them would help. A door I'd chained shut my entire life had opened, and now I could see through it. I glanced at the empty cup on the bedside table. It was like I could look at it and see the force of the cup pressing against the table, and the table and the air pressing on the cup. I really couldn't see it. It was more like an awareness. It was like I knew exactly how hard to push to make it fly across the room, or to snap it in half. The cup wobbled, and I shifted my attention elsewhere as a slight stabbing pain lanced through my temple. This isn't what I wanted. What would Mom and Dad think of all of it? Did they even know where I was? I tried to pull up my messages, because if Endgame hadn't contacted them, Mom was probably in a panic by now. But nothing. The message screen wouldn't even show. What? It wasn't possible my access to the net was still cut. That didn't make sense if I'd lost connectivity because of somebody dampening the connection while we were at that vivarium. Jack had said that maybe my psi was impacting it as well, but that was 4 days ago. Hadn't Ari said my psi stabilized? Is it possible Endgame cut my connection? Keeping me here whether or not I wanted to be here, and isolating me with no connection to the outside world, was not helping make Ari's case about my not being a prisoner. I finished dressing and went to join him in the hall. As promised, Ari was waiting outside the door. I was beginning to think you needed help after all. Sorry, I didn't mean to take so long. He motioned for me to follow him as he started away from my room. There's a common area right outside the hospital wing. It has a partial view of the compound that should sate your need to see where you are. I guess I'll be satisfied with that. I fell into step beside him. He was walking slowly, something I assumed was for my benefit. I can't connect to the net. Is that something you did? Not me, personally. I meant you in the general sense, Ari. You're receiving a bio-expansion to your nano-system. My understanding is the primary reason you were taken offline was because of that. What is a bio-expansion? Bio-expansion, an expansion to an individual nanosystem that involves adding a network of nanites explicitly programmed to rapidly heal and rebuild damaged cells and body parts. Though all nanosystems do minor body repairs and can expedite the healing of minor injuries, most nanosystems are limited in their ability to affect cell function in this way. The bulk of an individual's nanosystem is designed to connect them to the net and other nano-driven technology. Neat. Alright, that sounds pretty cool. Okay. A bio-expansion? Why? We all have them for the purpose of speeding cellular regeneration and healing. I believe they thought it would help you recover as well. I suppose that makes sense. I wasn't happy about it still not having connectivity, though. Even so, I shot Ari a half-hearted smile. I don't suppose it means I won't have to sleep anymore. Ari shrugged and didn't return the smile. We all require the usual amounts of sleep, though we often get somewhat less than that. Why do you ask? Never mind. I guess that joke was only funny if you were there. He gave me a confused glance, but said nothing else. Oh, that's a pretty hallway. We passed through the narrow infirmary halls to a much wider corridor with high ceilings. It was beautiful and strange. I felt out of place in it. It was too grand, too big for me, all of it. The soft echo of our footsteps followed as we walked through the empty hall. I passed a hand over my eyes again, keeping my gaze fixed on the floor. Are your eyes bothering you? Why do you ask? You've been rubbing them periodically since waking. I wasn't sure I wanted to tell him. In the first place, it wasn't as if something was wrong, per se. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it, then have him take me straight back to my room. They aren't really bothering me. Is that so? They aren't bothering me at all. Happy? There's no need to be irritated. I'm merely concerned about you. There's no need to be concerned about every little thing I do either. I took a deep breath, shutting my eyes. I'm sorry. There's no need for me to snap at you. It's understandable that you're anxious. You needn't apologize. And if something about your eyes is bothering you, there's no need to hide it. I don't want you to panic and rush me back to my room. I don't intend to panic. No, I can't imagine you panicking. Or smiling. He simply looked at me. Or changing expression at all. The place I wanted to take you was just ahead. I bit back a smirk. Looked like he could at least get occasionally exasperated, with enough teasing. Ari was referring to a wide, open doorway at the end of the hallway. When he reached it, he gestured me through. Hey, Rev! Hello! I found myself in a cozy lounge with chairs, tables, and a full window that ran the length of one wall. This is a nice lounge area. There was a small galley, though it appeared to be empty. Oh, I'm so glad you can see now. Excellent. Right. I was drawn to the window through a swirl of apprehension, though a swirl of apprehension bloomed in the pit of my stomach. I wanted to see it, but I was suddenly scared as well. The thought of looking out and seeing the undeniable skyline of Brazil made it all seem so final. Hugging my arms to my body, I went to the window anyway. We were pretty high up, and the sprawling grounds of the complex spread out beneath us. Nearby was a tower that was so familiar, though I'd never seen it in person, only in news reports and other media. I had to crane my neck to look at the top. It was beautiful, all of it, and it was not home. I kept tight grip on my elbows, unsure what to feel. There was a cloud of mixed emotions to sort through, and I didn't even know where to start. I don't suppose I'll be leaving here soon and going home? No, I'm afraid not. The council is unlikely to permit you to leave the grounds for quite some time. Going home is not an option. Ever? There was a lengthy pause. No. I'm sure you realize there is no opportunity for you to live peacefully outside of Endgame. Not anymore. He joins me at the window, looking out at the city. It would have been better if they'd found you as a child, so you could have been enrolled in our academy. We rarely recruit adults from the outside like this. Can you call it recruitment if I wasn't given another option? You aren't the only Esper for whom there were limited options. I looked away, trying my best not to sulk. He was right, of course, on all counts. What would I even do if they permitted me to leave? Go home and wait for the next people to pluck me off the street, or worse? What about my family? My parents? Do they even know where I am? Your parents were informed that you were in our care when they and your other family members were relocated. Relocated? What? It's merely a precaution. We aren't certain they were in any danger. Why would they be in danger? Because targeting the family of one of our highest-ranking members would give an enormous amount of leverage against Endgame. Most of us come here as children. Information about our families is highly protected so they can continue to live normally, no matter what position we obtain here. But your identity was known to many people before we even became aware of you. That means your family was known as well. We thought if we could take you without others realizing who we were, it would reduce the possibility of retaliation against your family. There would be no point to go after them if you were taken by a group unlikely to be swayed by their being in danger. It hadn't even occurred to me that retaliation against my family was a concern. We'd hoped to have time to look into methods of protection that didn't involve relocation, but things don't go as planned, and our involvement was made apparent. That's why, for their safety, we've moved your family to Efri and changed their identities. Efri. Pronounced Afre. This is one of the nations that makes up the Triad, a conglomerate of nearly 30 domes, 4 of which are megacities. Though large by comparison to other nations, it's still smaller than New Albion, with a population of only 96 million. Oh, only 96 million. That's just a small number. They are not as relaxed as Cerna, but not as strict and meritorious as New Albion, falling somewhere in the middle. Okay. Change their identities. Do you even know what that means for them? It's one thing for my life to be upended, but another for them. Dad could manage, but what about Mom? Could she keep painting? Her work was well known, so if she had to hide her identity... I buried my head in my hands. No. This wasn't supposed to happen. None of this was. I found it difficult to speak against the lump in my throat. Can I talk to them? I don't believe you'll be able to contact them yet, but we will look after them. This was so stupid. I was stupid. Hey now. I had hidden this all for so long, and because of that, Mom and Dad were uprooted, moved elsewhere. And what about Brian and Daniel? Oliver would probably be fine on Surrey. Wayne was with the safety department, so I imagine he would take it all in stride. But Daniel had just gotten engaged. Brian was still studying. This is a mess. I'd ruined things for everyone. Morgan Leone. I jumped when Ari said my name quietly. Why are you crying? Nothing. It's nothing. I'm fine. Are you certain? Perhaps we should have a counselor stop by your room later on. You seem distraught. Of course I'm distraught. You grabbed me off the damn street, revealed to everyone that I'm an Esper, and now my entire family had their lives turned upside down because of me. You can't possibly understand what any of this means for them. Much less what it means for me. It's just, I had an exam so I could keep studying, and now none of that matters. None of it. I'd have to be a robot not to be distraught. And you're standing there looking down at me like I've lost it. I hate this. My voice broke again as more tears of frustration welled up. Perhaps it was a mistake to allow you out of your room so soon. Something about the way he said that made me laugh. I wasn't sure what it was. Just the ridiculous of it? As if keeping me shut up in a hospital room would prevent me from being upset. It was as if he was completely incapable of grasping why any of this would frustrate me at all. Ari just watched me standing there laughing and crying in front of the window and said nothing else for a long time. The tears petered out and I was left rubbing my eyes, sniffling, and staring outside at the gorgeous day, wondering when things would feel normal again. It's beautiful. Yes, it is. After a very long silence, I felt a warm hand on my shoulder. I am sorry, Morgan. I looked at him gratefully. It wasn't much, but I appreciated the gesture. Here they are! We were interrupted by what looked like a nurse standing in the door calling down the hall to someone else. Within seconds, another man appeared. He wore a white coat like a doctor, but was disheveled, with hunched posture and dark circles under his eyes. He also looked more than a little annoyed as he came towards us, tapping into a handheld display. I shot Ari a sidelong glance and look. Dr. Sasaki? Correct. Figures. How strange. I don't believe I signed a release on this patient. But you would never take one of my patients without prior approval, would you? He didn't take me anywhere. I asked to go for a walk. The man didn't acknowledge what I said, but as soon as he was in arm's reach, he tucked the display into a large pocket and caught me by the chin, lifting my face slightly. The patient has excess lacrimal fluid on her face. Tissue around the eyes is swollen. Blood vessels in the eyes and conjunctiva appear enlarged. Are you experiencing emotional distress? What the hell? Excess lacrimal fluid? Why is everyone here so weird? I don't know. What an odd thing to go and say. Oh my goodness. I'm currently experiencing minor annoyance. Can you please let go of my face? When he didn't immediately do so, I reached up to remove his hand, but he grabbed my wrist and said, placing 2 fingers right below my thumb, "This is an invasion of personal space." Still experiencing tachycardia. As expected, you shouldn't be up. Considering you haven't been released yet, even an idiot would know they shouldn't be up. He shot Ari another annoyed look. Or allow a patient to walk out of the infirmary. And this is the second time you've left your room without permission. Well, Ari said he'd complain. We were about to return. Morgan went through quite a lot to arrive here. She wanted the reassurance of seeing the complex for herself. I didn't think a quick walk would be too much. Did you consult your medical degree before making that assessment, Ariel? I believe you're well aware I don't have one. In that case, perhaps you should stick to teleportation and leave the thinking to those of us who are better at it. Ooh. In the meantime, I'll be taking my patient back. This guy is harsh. Yeah, ouch. Dr. Sasaki's fingers looped around my wrist and he started pulling me away. I bit back a sigh. Maybe I should start getting used to being passed around like an object. I'll accompany you. Dr. Sasaki prodded me towards the door, sparing only a quick, disdainful glance back at Ari. Unnecessary. Instead, why don't you report that she's awake to that forgetful imbecile in charge? This dude is rude. What now? Reporting to Magnus about her condition does not preclude the possibility of me seeing her back to her room. Did this doctor just call the leader of Endgame a forgetful imbecile? Your participation isn't required. I glanced at Ari over my shoulder as I was ushered out of the room by the doctor. It didn't seem as though he would follow us, which surprised me a little. Another soft sigh escaped as I walked. I shouldn't have exploded him like that. He didn't deserve it. He, like everyone else here, was only doing his job, following orders or whatever. It wasn't as if he was the one who decided to do any of this. My problems coping weren't his fault. A sigh. Most definitely a sign of distress. The residual effects of sigh fatigue could be causing an emotional instability. I heard the doctor muttering to himself as he walked beside me. Was he going to be analyzing every single thing I did? He flipped through the display, observing me out of the corner of his eye. When he noticed me looking back, that didn't stop him at all. In fact, his lips curved up into an odd little smile. You appear to be recovering well, though. Thanks? They say you initiated a psi burst powerful enough to bring down an entire building. Do they? Unfortunately, I don't remember it all that well. What a pity. We have recordings from Ariel and Caleb, who witnessed it firsthand, but those haven't been turned over to me yet. Psi bursts are difficult to achieve. Generally, only bishops and queen ranks can create psi bursts of note. Is that so? Dr. Sasaki tapped the display against his chin, smiling at me over the top of it. Perhaps when you've recovered, you would demonstrate one? I have many theories about your abilities I'd like to verify. I'm not thinking that far ahead yet. Of course not. Of course. We mustn't forget that psi fatigue recovery can take some time. For you to achieve that magnitude of psi burst without training causes tremendous mental stress. There was even mild brain damage. Brain damage? That's what I need on top of everything else. We repaired it. But you didn't think you could put that much strain on your nervous system with no consequences, did you? Or perhaps you did. Your records show you may have not been aware you were an Esper. I didn't know I was a queen rank, and I didn't think much of anything when I created that cyburst. I was just panicked. How fascinating. A queen so adept at mimicking normal psi waves. Even she was unaware of her rank so far into adulthood. You truly are a unique case, aren't you? Doctor, were you not returning her to her room to rest? Ari's sudden appearance may have startled me, but Dr. Sasaki didn't act the least surprised. And weren't you going to give a report to the forgetful imbecile? I never indicated I would leave Morgan in your care before I did so. I'm fairly certain this is my room anyway. I can just go rest. Alone. Interviews and demonstrations will have to wait. I expected a protest, but as I sidestepped the doctor, he said nothing. Ari also watched me go without a word. Leaning against the door, I shut my eyes, listened to Dr. Sasaki launch into a rant about Ari knowing better than to give in to some whim and let me out of my room. A faint smile made its way to my face as I listened to him get in trouble. But it faded quickly. I kicked off my shoes and fell into the bed. Rolling onto my side, I clutched a pillow to my chest. There are a lot of questions about how they'd found me and what would happen to me now, but for the first time, I also realized what all this meant for other people in my life. I never imagined the fallout from all this would land on my parents, or brothers. Were they mad at me? Did they hate me? I squeezed my eyes shut, knowing that wasn't the case. Even if they were angry I'd been lying to them all this time, none of them would hate me for it. I wanted to talk to them. I wanted to go home. Tears threatened again. I sat up, pushing the pillow away. If I let myself get stuck in that way of thinking, I'd just cry again. Going home was already outside the realm of possibility. I leaned back against the pillows, staring at the wall opposite of the bed. And there was nothing I could do about my family anymore either. Endgame was keeping them safe. That was the important part. And for me, Cor Solaris was the safest place right now, whether or not I was happy about it. I would have to make the best of it somehow. Crying wouldn't change anything. This had always been a possibility. I hadn't expected it to happen in this way. I hadn't expected it to affect my family. But I'd always known there was a chance they would discover me. I shut my eyes, letting the tiredness take over. For now, I would rest, and then demand a bath because I'd never had the one I'd wanted. And also, I was kind of hungry. That was the last thought I had before I fell asleep again. Chapter 2, A Piece of Home. I pulled on my boots and stood, stretching the kinks out of my back. 3 days later, and I was so ready to be out of the infirmary. Though falling behind that ruddiness was an equally powerful reluctance to leave. I'd spent the last few days oscillating between boredom and amused irritation at the constant poking, prodding, and questioning. The only thing that made it bearable was getting to know the staff, the nurses, orderlies, and even Dr. Sasaki. He was admittedly odd, but he was also kind of a funny person. He had a very deep fascination with espers. In a way, it reminded me of Trent a little, even of how I could be with certain topics. It'd been off-putting at first, but I'd grown accustomed to it quickly, and outside the medical ward was an entire faculty of people I didn't know. The few I did know, I hadn't seen much. Dr. Sasaki had banned visitors lest someone abscond with me again. Apparently, he held grudges. I shot him another sidelong glance as he stood next to the bed, looking at a digital display in his hands. Everyone kept cheerily informing me I still had some residual effects of psi fatigue and shouldn't overdo it again yet. In spite of dire warnings, I felt fine now. Blood pressure stable, heart rate is good, synaptic activity continues to stabilize, your phoric system appears to be reaching homeostasis after the extreme stimulation of the last few weeks. What is the phoric system? Phoric system is a system that controls psionic ability. Neat. Alright. He looked up at me as he spoke. I expected all functions to return to normal within the next 10 days. We'll continue to observe you for the next months to be safe, so you'll be required to come for weekly check-ins. Now that your bio-expansion is complete, we may see full recovery sooner than expected. That's good to know. I believe your mental state will continue to improve as well, though I remain convinced relocating you to a more comfortable environment will speed this up. Dr. Sasaki suddenly leaned in very close. That said, I admit I still feel somewhat offended you find my infirmary disagreeable. I put up a hand to fend him off, already used to him doing this sort of thing. The fact that you insist on invading my personal space without warning is one of the reasons I'm uncomfortable here. Pupils are slightly dilated, a small spike in heart rate. Do I make you uncomfortable, Morgan? Well, I hedged. Somehow I didn't think insulting the man in charge of my medical care was a good idea. And he didn't always make me uncomfortable, just when he forgot that personal space was a thing. Difficulty maintaining eye contact is sometimes a sign of deception. I snapped my gaze right back at him, noting that he had that insufferable little smile again. That would mean I do make you uncomfortable. Will you please stop doing that? Doing what? Analyzing everything I do. It's incredibly disconcerting. Not everything is a medical condition. On the contrary. He started making notes on the display again, though I had no idea what he could possibly be interesting enough for him to write down. We exist as physical beings. There's not a single thing we see, taste, touch, hear, smell, or do that isn't driven by our physiology. Whether it's an illness or an emotion, everything is indeed a medical condition. If you say so. As your physician, it's my job to analyze your medical condition. Even as he said that, he did back out of my personal space, though. I'm certain you're aware of this, but though you're being released from the infirmary for now, we'll need to run some tests on your abilities in the future. It's necessary for your capabilities in a controlled environment and record your psi fingerprint. Psi fingerprint? Every esper has a unique waveform. As a queen, you can mimic others, but your psi still possesses its own waveform. We keep a record of every esper in Endgame. That now includes you. But for the time being, Morgan, focus on your recovery. I'm looking forward to an interesting display once you're fully mended. He smiled again and strode out of the room. I groaned, I groaned softly, dragging a hand through my hair. Sometimes I got this feeling of being little more than a new toy for them to study and show off, though I knew that wasn't a fair assessment, not for any of them. Not for Dr. Sasaki either. I didn't think he was a bad person. Actually, he'd never been anything but kind to me. He did seem to care about his patients a great deal. There came a soft tap at the door. "Come in." I wasn't terribly surprised to see Ari was the one who came to pick me up, but he wasn't alone this time. The woman with him was one I'd met that night in the alley, and I hadn't seen her at all since my arrival. I wasn't sure I even remembered her name. She peeked around the doorframe and grinned at me as Ari stepped inside. "You're looking a lot better than I remember." I'm feeling much better than I was then, too. "I hope you don't mind Vanessa coming with me," she insisted. Of course I didn't mind. I couldn't hide away and avoid meeting people forever. "I told you it'd be fine. And don't let this kid mislead you." She slapped Ari's arm with the back of her hand as she passed him on her way to me. "I'm not Vanessa. I'm Van. He knows I prefer it. He just likes to be a brat." It's nice to meet you." Kid? Brat? Ari didn't look to be that much younger than her, if at all. "So, do you remember me?" I did, but interestingly enough, I didn't remember the artificial arm. Maybe I'd been too distracted to notice it before. Part of her right hand was artificial as well. I wonder how that happened. I remember you somewhat. There are still bits and pieces of that day that are pretty fuzzy. Now that I think about it, didn't Ari say that you're a bishop? Correct. One of the best. If you're ready to go, Morgan, there's no reason we can't discuss this on the way to your new apartment. After all, we did come here to escort you there. Don't make it sound so dire. We're not escorting her like she's a criminal. She grinned at me as we walked to the door together. A little overwhelmed, I simply walked alongside her without saying anything. "We're just going to show you where you'll be staying. It's not like we're some kind of armed escort." I guess that's good to know. You guess? Girl, if you have to start having to have an armed escort just to walk down the hall, it's time to be worried. As we walked, there were a few residual butterflies trying to start up, but Vanessa gave my arm a very gentle squeeze. When I looked at her, she smiled softly. "No need to be so nervous, you know." "I'm not nervous." She just laughed at that. "Yeah, sure. We're not psychics or anything, so that wobbly attempt at reassurance is definitely convincing." Well, she had a point there. I couldn't exactly fool an organization of espers, could I? "Sorry. Have you always been this timid? That is definitely not the impression I got from Ari's and Caleb's report." "I'm not trying to be timid." As we passed the lounge Ari and I had gone to a few days ago, I realized that spot marked the end of what I'd seen of this place. Everything beyond this point was new. I can understand how you feel a little. Whether you like being stuck in that room or not, the infirmary probably felt safe. I imagine stepping out here feels like enemy territory, except we're not your enemy. Inside the lift, Vanessa pressed one of the buttons on the control panel. I'm sure it's difficult having to come to terms with things on a level that it's a little more real. Probably like crossing the point of no return. I swallowed hard. That definitely was a bit on the nose. "Vanessa, isn't that going too far?" "Wait, was it? Sorry, I didn't mean anything by that. Was I right? It's alright. I mean, you are a bishop after all." In spite of what she says, Vanessa isn't looking into your thoughts. Scanning the mind of a conscious individual and pulling out useful information is quite challenging. Is it? You'd be surprised. People's minds are just a cacophony of jumbled thoughts that fly past at unimaginable speeds and vanish in an instant. Picking out a single thread of them and making sense of it isn't something you can usually do if someone is awake and, not drugged. Plus, it's pretty dangerous for both parties. But there are espers with telepathy? It's not what you're imagining properly. It's more detecting intent, feelings, images, or ideas. It's not like having normal conversation or eavesdropping on what someone is thinking. And don't worry, Ari's right. I'm not peeking into your head or anything. Despite how she looks, Vanessa is simply rather talented at reading people. Hey, what the hell does that mean? Despite how she looks? She grabbed Ari's cheek and gave it a very solid pinch. He reached up an arm to fend her off. Vanessa, please stop. And what's up with all this Vanessa crap again lately? I told you to knock it off. Is that how you treat your superiors? You do not outrank me. I'm not talking about rank, buddy. Bishops are just legitimately superior to you scrawny knights. I broke into laughter, watching her corner him against the wall of the elevator cab and bully him. His expression barely changed at all, but it was still rare for me to see him that animated. And somehow, it was just seeing something that looked like a semi-normal interaction was nice. Vanessa and Ari both froze as I laughed at them, and somehow their surprised expressions just made me laugh harder. Sorry, I'm sorry. Vanessa abandoned Ari and beamed at me. You finally laughed. Ari straightened his clothes and brushed his hair back into place as the door to the lift opened. If you wanted to make her laugh, it wasn't necessary to go that far, Vanessa. Vanessa tried to elbow him, but he slipped into the hall before she could. She shot me a grin. Like I said, he's definitely a brat. Come on. She pulled me into the corridor and past multiple doors. Vanessa, you don't have to drag her with you like that. She's still recovering. Van gave Ari a teasing grin over her shoulder. You're already being awfully protective of her, aren't you? As the Queen's Knight, that is my job. Hey, I'm the Queen's Bishop. Your job isn't to protect her from me. Queen's Knight? What does that mean? He's talking about being a part of the First Guard. Since you're still new to all this, you're likely unaware. The highest ranked espers in Endgame are placed in an elite group referred to as the Guard. The Guard is generally headed by a king and queen ranked esper, each of whom has a knight, rook, and bishop assigned to them. Though the king is currently considered the de facto commander of the Endgame's esper force, the queen and her guard lead and oversee many of the more important missions. Hey! Oh, excuse me. Wow, look at Mr. Encyclopedia here. I think you missed your true calling, Sir Ariel. Ari ignored her as she started teasing again. But the queen position was empty, wasn't it? Dr. Sasaki said something about that. Correct. Until you arrived, the entire guard was headed by Magnus Ulrich, currently the only king rank in Endgame. The Queen's Guard still tends to oversee the bigger missions, but the queen position has been vacant for a long time. So they were pulling me off the street and pushing me straight into one of the most important roles in Endgame just because of my rank? Based on what he said, this elite team was usually made of just 8 people, maybe even less. What did a rank say about my actual ability to do this job? Come on, Morgan. There's no reason to think so deeply about any of that yet. You still haven't even fully recovered. Van pulled me a little faster down the corridor, gesturing at the doors. As you can see, this is one of our residential wings. Agents live here with their families, or alone if they don't have any family staying here with them. Entire families stay here? Sometimes. Parents and siblings of minors can live on the grounds if they have skills that enable them to do work somewhere on the complex. Spouses and the like are allowed even if they work elsewhere. What about families that can't work here? A lot of them live in Brazil, but as you probably know, it's not easy to become a resident here. Right. Brazil was pretty notorious for having a strict immigration policies. Getting a permit to live in the city was quite tough. Regardless, I hadn't really thought about the families living here, though I guess it made sense. Anyway, since you're here alone, we shuffled things around so you're pretty close to me and Ari. Oh, just the 2 of you? Is there someone else you'd prefer to live close to? Since you said it that way, I assumed I was put close to the 2 of you because of the whole guard thing. And Ari said there is a knight, bishop, and a rook. Indeed, Caleb is also nearby. Caleb? Vanessa burst out laughing. Look at her face. Oh man, you really don't like that guy, do you? In spite of the situation, in spite of feeling sort of down and a little scared, I watched her wipe at her eyes and laugh. I found myself smiling in amusement. Wow, I wish Caleb could see the look of absolute rapture you had when Ari said he's in your guard too. Vanessa. She leaned against the wall, holding her torso as she tried to catch her breath. Not a fan of our little Kale? Well, he kidnapped me, and was kind of rude about it. She snickered and shot Ari a teasing grin. And Ari wasn't? He was surprisingly polite for a kidnapper. Ari managed to look mildly exasperated at our teasing. We did give our word we'd take her straight to her quarters. Well, we certainly can't pause in the hallway for a bit of a laugh. That would have us going against our word, wouldn't it? Anyway, don't worry about Kale, alright? He's a bigger brat than this one, but he's actually not a bad guy. You needn't act as if you're that much older than us, Vanessa. It's not about age. It's about experience. Experience. How old are the two of you anyway? Now that Ari brought it up, I was curious. 42, thank you very much. Why is this highlighted? Time measurement. During this era of space travel that led colonists to Archelaus, the caravan ships used a sort of modified Earth calendar and clock to mark the passage of time. When the first caravan arrived to Archelaus, a planet without day/night cycles or even proper seasons, there was some debate on whether or not to continue this tradition or move to an exclusive calendar more suited to such a world. Solar years on Archelaus are shorter than years on Earth, with roughly 1 year Earth year passing for every 1.5 years on Archelaus. Archelaus has a 15-month calendar, and keeping a 28-hour day-night cycle that is largely artificial on the planet itself does not have a natural cycle. The biodomes on the day side of the planet darken during the night, while the night side biodomes have artificial lighting to stimulate day. Usually day and night are used to refer to this day-night cycle. Sometimes the term cycle is used to refer to the full 20-hour day. Because of the difference in how years are marked, character ages seem higher than they would in Earth years. So, I'm going to pull out my calculator here because I'm curious. She said that she is 42. So, okay, 42 divided by 1.5 is that she would be about 28 in Earth years. Ari, 36. Okay. So, 36 divided by 1.5 is 24. So he would be 24 in Earth years. So, I expected him to be older. He looked young, but he was just acted so stuffy. Yet wasn't even that much older than me. You're 34, right? Pretty recently turned? 7 months ago. I don't know if that counts as recently anymore. That makes you the baby of our little team. Kale is 37. Anyway, here we are. We stopped at the front of the door with the number D01 on it. Alright, D1 on it. Van pushed a code onto the console next to it. You can change the password yourself, but for now we just put your birthday in. She pushed the door open and shot me a grin. Surprise! Oh, cool. What? The layout was the exact same as my old flat. All my things were in the same places and everything. It was weird. Van squeezed past me and stepped inside, spinning around to face me. What do you think? I'm not sure. How exactly did you do this? Ari followed me inside, stopping just beside the door as I went further in to poke around and explore. It seems they sent a team to retrieve all your belongings. Yup, right after these two kidnappers grabbed you. I would prefer it if you both stopped calling me that. Apprehending an unregistered Esper is part of our job. Van just laughed and flopped onto the sofa, making herself at home. Oh, I keep getting hiccups. My apologies. I still wasn't sure how I felt about it. Not Van on the sofa, but everything else. There was a strange disconnect between where I knew I was and where it felt like I was. I trailed my fingers over one of the shelves. Oh. It's not just that my things are here. The floor plan and layout are the same as well. We wanted you to be comfortable. The entire wing is set up in a modular fashion, so we can literally move the walls around. It makes it pretty easy to rearrange things like this. That does seem convenient. Sometimes it's easier to rearrange walls than shuffle people around when they get married or move in together. When me and Mara got married, we already lived next door, so all we had to do was relocate a couple of walls and rearrange furniture. Even the fixtures are the same, though. Some of the wall details? I couldn't imagine they had ripped some of this stuff out of my flat to bring it here. We've got a good attention to detail. They both watched me as I poked through the kitchen. Don't like it? Alright, so there's analytical. I don't dislike it, or emotional. It makes me uncomfortable. Honestly, she does seem to be... Oh man, I'm getting distracted by the drawing of the artificial arm here. I really like the details on this. Can you see that? That is so cool. Okay, alright. I don't dislike it. It makes me kind of uncomfortable. Alright. I don't dislike it. I don't dislike it exactly. It's just a little disconcerting is all. It's like being back home, but I'm not back home. I'm not quite sure how to feel about it. I wasn't actually sure whether it would help or hurt to have my place like this. It was just sort of confusing, really. Home without being home. That said, your place is tiny. We can definitely move some walls and give you more space. The flat on the other side of this one is empty. That's not necessary. You don't even have a proper bed. This thing can't be all that comfortable. I just laughed a little as she bounced on the sofa. You might be surprised. I might be. Or I might just go home and sprawl gratefully on my massive real bed and hope you're nice and jealous over here. They did expand the flat to include a new bedroom. What? When did that happen? It was in the report, Vanessa. There was a full report on my flat? Ugh, you're going to learn one thing fast. In this place, there's a report on everything. Well, anyway, this is your new home. I hope you learn to love it eventually. Technically, it's my old home, too. And I already did love it, so... Oh, so you can be a little cheeky when you want, can't you? I'd offer the two of you something to drink, but there's only water. You can simply place an order for... Oh, we have a little guest. Oh, hi, sweetie. Do you want to come say hi? Hi, no? Do you want to come say hi? Yeah, it's kitty time. We have a kitty cat. A kitty cat. Do you want to stand on my shoulder? There you go. Alright. Hello. Do you want to come help me play this visual novel? And we're just going to hang out. Being tall. Yeah, hello. Oh, hello, sweetie. Yes. Hello, sweet kitten. Yes. Yes, hello. Wouldn't it be nice just to be able to go and, order things and get what you order and whatever you want? Kitty time. It is a kitten. Alright, you want on my lap? Alright, there you go. Alright, so you can simply place an order for food items if you want, but many of us simply use the mess hall or lounge. But some of us do like to cook at home. Some of us are unaccustomed to cooking for ourselves. Then some of us need to learn. There's little time for it between training and missions. I listened to the two of them bicker good-naturedly. I knew they were probably trying to distract me or make me laugh, or at least Vanessa was. But as I stared down at my hands resting on the familiar placemats, I couldn't rid myself of the out-of-place feeling. Maybe it would have been better to come here as a child. I never would have had time to question my place or be sad about it. I tried to stop the tears, but the lump in my throat finally grew too big to ignore, and a soft little sob escaped me as I buried my head in my hands. I wasn't just sad. It was all frustrating, infuriating, and generally overwhelming. It seemed like tears were just going to be the chosen method for letting it out. Van was on her feet in an instant, already coming towards me. Ari stood there as if he wasn't sure what to do or why I was upset. When Van's arms went around me, I started crying harder. No one spoke for several minutes. Vanessa just stroked my back, her arm making a soft mechanical click as she moved her hand back and forth. Sorry, I'm sorry. It's so stupid to cry like this. It's not stupid to cry. You've been through an ordeal. It isn't as if we intended it to be an ordeal. Ari, why don't you go kindly wait in the hall if that's going to be your addition to the conversation? There was a moment's pause before he turned away, heading for the door. At first I thought he was angry, but it didn't seem like it. It seemed like he was doing as told. Watching him leave somewhat snapped me out of it, and I pulled away from Van, wiping at my eyes. I'm sorry. You don't have to apologize. It's okay for you to have feelings about all this, even negative ones. No one here is trying to pretend your life hasn't been completely turned upside down by all of this. She took me gently by the arm and led me to the sofa. I can't imagine how difficult all of this has been for you. It's just that every time every time I try to think ahead about what's going to happen next, about what all this means for me, I feel lost. I nodded. I think that's natural. Suddenly, being told your life is going to be heading in a different direction than you intended isn't something anyone wants to hear. Will I have any say at all in the things I'll be doing? I mean, it's already decided that I'm going to be put into this guard with you because of my rank, but what does that mean? I'm not interested in fighting or violence. None of us are interested in those things. It just sometimes comes along with protecting people. I know. I don't mean to say you're all violent or anything like that. That isn't what I mean. I know that. I know that we were trained to do this sort of thing while you weren't. Listen, I'm not going to pretend they won't encourage you to actually go on missions. But that doesn't mean you won't get any say at all. This may or may not be what you wanted, but you may still find it fulfilling. We help a lot of people. I know that. I know I'll adapt. I know that. I took a deep breath and let it out slowly. Maybe I'm just mad that I got caught. I let out a bitter laugh. I managed to hide things for so long, even though I didn't know how significant the secret was. Then Endgame found me after I hid it for so long. Maybe that's it. I know this is a slight subject change, but what about my parents? How are they? And my brothers? I still haven't been able to contact them. It would help a lot if I could. I don't know. I haven't kept track of that, but I'll look into it and at least get you an update. I'd really appreciate that. She gave me another very gentle squeeze. I'm very sorry things turned out this way. So am I, but in the end, you're right. If it feels like everything is broken right now, then my only choice is to rebuild it into something new. Do you want me to stay with you a little while longer, Morgan? I shook my head. I'm sure you have better things to do. Well, not really. It's not a problem to stay. No, I think I'll be okay. I probably just need some time to decompress. All right, but I'm right next door. And you can always also contact me through the internal message system. Ah, that was right. I had partial access back now. I still couldn't link out from Endgame's network, but I could contact people within the organization now. I could also catch up on what had been going on in the outside world since I'd arrived. That might help distract me for a while. Van stood, and I followed suit out of habit. Why don't I stop back around dinner and take you down to the lounge? I can introduce you to Mara. I think you'll like her. That sounds great. Hang in there, okay? Just remember that you aren't here alone. I know. Thank you. Oh. I am petting this cat that's in my lap right now, and I'm getting meowed at if I stop, so I am multitasking. She gave me another hug and let herself out. I shut the door behind her and slumped against it, letting out a shuddering sigh. Retreating back to the sofa, I flopped down and dragged a pillow over my face. Oh, are we done? Are we done? Meow? Meow? Back onto my shoulders? Yep. Hello. Okay. We'll do our best with... Hey. Oh. Hello. Sweetheart. There's only so long I can hold my hand up. Yes. You are very good. What do you think of this game? Okay. Alright. Retreating back to the sofa, I flopped down and dragged a pillow over my face. Too much. It was definitely too much. Thank you for nuzzling the microphone, giving some love. Very appreciative. Alright. I should look around a little first, especially to check out the bedroom they mentioned before. And then I was finally going to have my damn bath. Hey, excuse me! Can we not headbutt the microphone? I need that. Alright. Oh. Sweetheart, I know. I have to keep reading the story. Are you gonna go have your own time? You're gonna nuzzle the green screen? Alright, have a good day. Thank you. I was finally going to have my damn bath, even if it was days late. Because the infirmary only had showers and my demand for a relaxing bubble bath had gone unheeded. But now there was no one to stop me. And after that, I didn't know. Maybe I'd read. Maybe I'd go for a walk or something. For now, I was going to go relax in a tub full of bubbles and try to forget everything for a while. Chapter 3. Fairy Queen. So, who should I expect to meet at this meeting? It's mostly people you've already met. Everyone in the guard. It's nothing to be nervous about. It won't be a bunch of strangers, I promise. I was reading a little about Endgame last night. Oh? Well, I tried watching the news for a bit to see what was going on out there, but the news about Cyree was a little too much. That situation is tough. I can't say I don't understand the protests. They say the new mining quotas put in place by the UTG are ridiculous. What is UTG? Unified Triad Government. Got it. I agree. It's sad to see things turning violent again. It is, but I think it was inevitable. The dissidents there were just waiting for a reason to start calling for independence again. She was right, of course, but it was scary the situation crumbled so fast. Things had been fine before all this, and a week later, Cyree was on the verge of a revolution. I hope Oliver is okay. And Trent, wherever he is. Anyways, that's depressing talk. What were you reading about regarding Endgame? Well, I realized I had access to some internal files, so I thought that it might be a good idea to do some research and learn what I can. Trying to read up on everyone and learn what makes us tick? I don't have access to any personal files, actually, but I found some information on organizational structure and things of that nature. There wasn't much about the Guard. I'm sure they want to be cautious about giving you access, given you are capable of teleporting out of here. Probably paranoid you'll take our secrets with you. Oh, again with the hiccups. Oh my goodness. Afraid I'll escape? Really? Have I demonstrated I'll try that? Well, you did. While in full control of my mental state? Her laugh echoed in the empty hall as we walked. Not like the king doesn't hightail it out of here if given even the slightest chance. That makes your king sound like a prisoner. Well, he's a special case. He's the only one we have, after all. And I'm the only queen you have. That's true. But what happens if there are multiple queens? Or kings? I wondered that yesterday when reading. I saw something about first guard and second guard. Van scoffed. You people are so rare. I think that's happened once in the entire history of Endgame. There is a second guard, but it's only 6 people since there are no additional king or queen ranks to fill the roles. And what about the Moirai? I saw something about them, but it was vague. Moirai. The Moirai are a non-public group that functions as a source of advice for the Endgame Council. This group is made up of multiple, usual 3 or more bishops, who are especially adept at precognition. The Moirai keep their eyes on future possibility events that could spell a trouble for Archelaus and Endgame as an organization. Using their foresight, the Moirai help the Endgame act on threats before they occur, and they prep ahead for threats that are on their horizon. That's a very appropriate name. Yeah, they're not a publicly known group. My older sister is one of them. Her precognition is way stronger than mine. So it's a group of precogs then. Basically, yeah. They monitor, well, anything major that might be on their horizon. That sounds extremely difficult, to say the least. You're not wrong. I mean, look at this stuff on Cyre. We were aware it would happen a little ahead of time, so we already have some relief teams in place before things got bad. Even though Endgame doesn't get involved in political issues, we're just there to help civilians that might get caught in it at all. The riots up there aren't pretty, but sometimes our guys stepping out of situations have turned sour. Rev, no, it's not a new mic. It's the other one, but I've been kind of playing with it a little bit. Does it sound better? Oh. Right. The riots up there right now aren't pretty, but sometimes our guys step in to get people out of situations that have turned sour. Anyway, Endgame knew it was coming, and we let it happen. You know why? Because preventing it may have led to something even worse down the line? Yee. Exactly. Looking ahead is tricky business. The Moirai can't only look at what situations might be brewing. They have to see beyond at possible outcomes of our involvement. For instance, what if stopping this outbreak of violence led to a buildup of tensions that resulted in a bigger outbreak of violence down the line? We can't ignore the far future for the sake of the near future. Can they really see that far ahead? Sometimes. And if they can't, sometimes we hold off intervening because we don't want our actions to lead to something even worse than we know what is ahead. I guess that makes sense. Better the devil you know, right? Because the future is never a single path. There's the path we're all on, and all the other paths we can shift to. Every action we take builds those paths or shifts us onto new ones. And sometimes an action with a better short-term outcome has a far worse long-term outcome. Precognition seems like a really terrible responsibility. And what do you do when you know something terrible is around the corner, but you also know intervening will cause something even worse? How do you choose who to save? Alright, 3 options. I don't think I could sacrifice people knowingly. I'd have to pick the path that saves most people, and you can't lose sight of the fact the future always holds unknown. Alright, so I don't think I could sacrifice people unknowingly. Sometimes when you're in these kinds of positions, you do have to think more analytically. So I'd have to pick the path that saves the most people, I think. I'd have to pick the path, and I'd have to pick the ability to speak as well. Blech. I'd have to pick the choice that saves the most people, whatever choice it might be. And that's exactly what we tried to do. I guess to the rest of the world, it sometimes looks like we don't care when we stay out of things. But the reality is we're just trying to protect as many people as possible. Or maybe we pick a strategy which makes the situation better than it would have been without our involvement, even if it's not a perfect solution. When people judge you for that plan's failings without knowing all the alternatives were so much worse. It sounds like a thankless job. It can be. The Moirai have it tough because they drive a lot of these decisions and have to live with the consequences of them. Her voice sounded so sad when she said that. I guess having a sister in the group meant she saw the fallout firsthand. I can't say I know exactly what it's like, but I feel like the day I was recruited, I had a moment like that. Oh? There was a moment, and this moment, I was at a cafe with Jack. and I suddenly had a powerful mental image of Caleb and Ari showing up. Something that felt so sure, so certain. I knew it would happen. And of course, they showed up right after, yeah? Yeah. Definitely sounds like a premonition. Was there time to warn Jack? I probably could have. I didn't try. Why not? Because this is where I chose to be, I guess. When I weighed the options, it just seemed like the best one. What made you think so? I gave her a slight smile. The devil you know. She lifted her chin and gave me an indignant look. I'm not a devil, thank you very much. Kale, we can talk about, but I am definitely not a devil. I don't know, to be honest, it's not like I had any sort of dramatic reason. I was tired, scared. It was kind of a toss-up what the right thing to do was. It would have been nice to have a bit of that ability to see further ahead and pick the best path. You think there might have been better paths out there? Maybe. You're the one who said the future is tricky, and it's hard to know where short-term gain comes at a longer-term cost. Well, I think you made the right call. You don't know where you'd be if you had gone with Jack. That's true. You don't know if he could have protected you the way we can. I will admit letting Ari and Caleb find us felt like the safest choice at the time. Though if Jack hadn't told me they were with Endgame, I probably would have warned him. Considering neither of them bothered to mention it. They didn't even tell you that much? Well, as soon as they shoved me in the car and drove off, they started saying people were chasing us. Then they drove us into a wall. I read about that part in the report. It sounded like some sort of plan those idiots would come up with. I can't believe they didn't mention it at all. No wonder you knocked a building on their stupid heads. To be fair, it was an accident. Pfft, I'd have done it on purpose. We walked a long way before we reached where we were going. I'm glad that she's gotten a friend out of all this. That she's had somebody that she can go and talk through all this kind of stuff. We walked a long way before we reached where we were going. We paused right outside an office in which we knew multiple people were waiting for us. Are you ready? As I'll ever be. Vanna told me a little about Magnus Ulrich during dinner yesterday, but not much. Just that he was the same age as her and a king rank. He was considered the leader of Endgame's Espers. I mean, his name came up frequently in any news report involving the group. And he often released statements about the organization's actions. But aside of that, he was pretty reclusive. I had seen his image, but never an actual interview. There was also a council involved in leadership decisions. I didn't know if it made Magnus more like a commander of the forces or a figurehead. Either way, I was still vague on the exact command structure. The important thing was that he was the public face of Endgame. I followed behind her as she stepped into the office. Leaning against the desk was a tall, blond man dressed entirely in white. He looked up and smiled as we entered. And there he was, Magnus Ulrich. Here they are! A bright smile was on Magnus's face as he came towards me, stretching out both hands. I extended my own with a little trepidation. It was enveloped by his as he shook them enthusiastically. Welcome to Endgame. I've been looking forward to meeting you, Miss Leon. Or Morgan. Can I call you Morgan? We're all friendly with each other here, right everyone? First name basis and all that. He beamed at me and led me closer to the others, where an empty chair was waiting for me. Now, you've met most everyone here, but I'll do the formal introductions anyway. These are, of course, Ari Vaughn and Caleb Zing, the Queen's Knight and Rook. I hear you don't get on with our little Kale. But well, who does? Van snickered behind me, but Caleb didn't seem amused. And you've met our dear Vanessa Scott, the Queen's Bishop. And these ladies are my guard. Mara Parasad, my knight, Dane Lopez, my cook, and Odette my bishop. Magnus left my side and started around the desk to the large chair on the other side. Though you already know who I am. I'm Magnus Ulrich, head of Endgame. I want to extend the absolute warmest welcomes to our little group. I'm going to have a little drink of water. Alright. So he seems friendly. I know your induction was a little rocky, but really is a relief to have you with us. Everyone here will be working closely with you, Morgan, but I'm sure you'll find your own guard most helpful in getting settled. Probably not all of them. I shot a quick glance Caleb's way. He was still scowling at nothing and looking like he'd rather be anywhere else than here. Ha! You were just thinking Caleb wouldn't be much help, weren't you? I immediately snapped my gaze back to Magnus, heat flooding my face. No. I bet you were. It's not like she's been around much the last few days. It's not like he's been around much the last few days anyway. I have other things to do than babysit the new kid. I'm not a child. Oh, you've been acting like one ever since you got here. You mean ever since you kidnapped me? I'm sorry, there wasn't much time to read the victim's guide to behaving like a mature kidnappee before you shoved me into a car and teleported me to a decrepit building where I almost died. Twice. You almost died? You knocked a damn building on our heads. Pretty sure you deserved it. We were just following our orders, which, by the way, you shitty bishops insisted on. Went bloody fantastic, didn't it? So thanks for that plan. Next time, let's just arrest someone the normal way, yeah? I shot Van a surprised look. She rubbed the back of her head sheepishly. I told you the future is tricky, right? It's so nice to see the new team getting along so well. We're not. He ignored Caleb as he looked at me. Well, with that out of the way, were they always like this? Morgan, I'm sure you know we've been without a queen rank in our organization for nearly 10.5 years. Oh, he was jumping right in, wasn't he? I'm aware, yes, though I don't know much about what happened to the previous queen rank. I was pretty young at the time and was focused on my studies. Well, not much information was released about it anyway, which is how we prefer to keep it. Nevertheless, the fact remains we've had a vacant spot on the guard for quite a long time. That's what I've heard, though I'm not sure I understand why it's so necessary to shove me into the empty slot when I have no training or experience. Because this is the way our organization works. We have the council on one side, a group of non-espers who help guide our vision, and on this side, a balanced group of elites who span the ability spectrum from knight to bishop, rook to king, and queen, just like a game of chess. It's a bit of a whimsical setup, isn't it? I guess I'd never thought about it. I'd never spent any time looking into the history of Endgame, its founders, or anything. I just knew it had been founded only a few decades after colonization. That was already hundreds of years ago. The council helps things balanced. The council helps keep things balanced by offering a perspective we don't always have as espers, but the guard leads and commands the rest of the agents. We're also a symbol, if you will, a symbol which has been incomplete for a long time. I'll be honest, our council has been anxious about the lack of queen rank. As you know, they are the strongest espers we are aware of. That's why they were so determined to ensure you didn't fall into the hands of anyone who might coerce you to abuse your abilities. That makes you sound like a weapon of mass destruction, doesn't it? My deepest apologies. Yeah, they're all very young. I'm curious how old Magnus is, but, everyone introduced to us so far has been in the equivalent of being in their 20s. The idea of someone so cute being capable of terrible things is a little outrageous. But, of course, had anyone else obtained your powers, it surely could have led to something awful. You've been briefed on the reason for the approach we took to your recruitment. This kidnapping, as you call it. I'm sure it felt like that to you. I was shoved into a car against my will. We do apprehend unregistered espers on a fairly regular basis. But if you see it that way, I'm sure you feel a bit forced into joining us. Magnus was speaking in a very soft tone, fingers templed against his chin, but there was an underlying coldness which seeped into his voice as he spoke. I wasn't sure how to answer him. It's just the way things are, isn't it? Yes, it is. I do hope you're able to move past Caleb and Ari's role in what happened and work with them as teammates. They were, as Caleb says, following their orders. Orders I gave them, based on what the Morai told you. Yes. Of course, it was also to save your life. After all, not everyone wanted to capture you. Killing a fledgling queen rank might have been a simpler alternative to trying to deal with a more powerful one down the line. For instance, Jack Visker. I didn't come here to listen to you talk about that creep, Magnus. If he was that big a risk to the Queen, you should have let us kill him when we had the chance. You think any of us will be able to look him in the eye and kill him? Especially you? I follow orders, and the fact she's here at all is evidence of it. Isn't that what we all do? Follow every damn order like good little soldiers? Yeah, and you haven't stopped complaining about it since you got that order. Then next time, you should be the one to go out, pull some scared kid off the street, and then throw them into danger. Caleb, why don't you step outside if you're going to shout? I think I will. This is a waste of time, and I have better things to do. He stormed out of the office, and a split second later, Ari followed him. I'll talk to him. We had a prior engagement anyway. He set his hand on the handle, and paused and looked back at me. I also wish to formally welcome you to Endgame, Morgan. I hope we can work together amicably in the future. Oh, how unusual for the taciturn Ari to give you a personal welcome. You two get along surprisingly well. I don't know about that. Now, no need to be shy about it. You must have made quite an impression on him already. I wasn't sure how to feel about Magnus. He wasn't at all what I was expecting. Why don't the rest of you wait outside as well? I'm sure you all have other things scheduled for today, and I was planning to spend some time alone with Morgan anyway. The 3 remaining members of the guard shared a quick look. Magnus's 3 members filed out, but Vanessa came to the desk and leaned down between us. You better behave yourself, Magnus. You upset Morgan, and I'll make sure Mara gives you hell for at least a month. That's harsh, Van. All I want to do is talk to her for a while. She straightened and started out, setting a hand on my shoulder and giving it a gentle squeeze as she passed me. I'll be right outside. Don't let this guy bully you, all right? As she walked out, leaving the 2 of us alone. Magnus stood as well, but he walked to the window, looking out with both hands clasped behind his back. How do you people know Jack? Caleb and Ari seem weirdly familiar with him. He used to be a member of Endgame. He neglected to mention that. He would. You might say he defected. To Crimson. Crimson? He said he was a member of the court. I knew he was dishonest. I knew it. And you believed him? I glared at him when he gave me an infuriatingly patronizing look. I had no reason to. He wasn't the one who kidnapped me. I can see it will take some time to move past that. Regardless of what I now know now, whether or not I believe Jack is based on what I knew then, which was that Caleb and Ari took me against my will. I won't apologize for the decision we made, Morgan. Most arrests are made against a person's will, and while arrest isn't the correct verbiage either, it was the right thing to do, and it likely saved your life. The worst potential future for you was the one we found, what was left of your... The worst potential future for you was the one we found what was left of your body and delivered news of your death to your parents. I'm not asking for an apology. Then what are you asking for? For you to stop patronizing me. Very well. Morgan, part of the reason the Council and I are so intent on making sure no one else got you first is that we desperately need your abilities. Crimson acquired a queen 3 years ago, and we've all recently learned a group known as the Host has a queen of their own. The Host, a shadowy organization with murky goals. I nearly said murky goats. This is a shadowy organization with murky goats. The group known as the Host is thought to have been around for a while, but it's been within the last year that they've started gaining traction, possibly due to the skill of their new leader. They usually pop up when espers are involved, and many rumors swirl around who they are and what they want. The only thing that is certain is that this group's members behave strangely and have unusual abilities. I wouldn't be surprised if this Host has something to do with what happened with Rory, the esper that we saw by the fountain originally. The Host? You met her once already, I believe. Quite a nasty encounter. That terrifying woman who attacked us in the vivarium? What exactly is the host? Or rather, who are they, rather? He waved a hand dismissively. You'll learn about all of that in time. There are others also eager to acquire not just queen-ranked espers, but any rank, any esper they can. It may come as a surprise to you, but even the dissidents on Cyre are seeking espers to join their cause. Cyre has a reputation as a somewhere for espers trying to find a place to live, normal lives as they call it, provided they can get up there. They have fewer tools for detecting them and are often beyond our range to find them or bring them back even though the colonies officially adhere to triad policies. There are espers who live normally, and those who take up work as mercenaries, freelancers, become test subjects. Despite the reputation, it isn't actually that different from here. Test? He waved his hand again, a gesture meant to end that topic. My jaw tightened. I didn't like being fed bits of information only. Who does? At any rate, it's important to understand while Endgame has a numbers advantage over most groups, numbers can only do so much against high-ranked espers, especially queen ranks. I said the guard is a symbol, and in a way that's true. Showcasing our elites is a way to dissuade groups from stepping too far out of line. We needed you, and we couldn't let anyone else get their hands on your abilities. High-level espers are too capable of causing harms to others. One of our functions is also keeping dangerous espers off the streets after all. Not that I'm dangerous. Queen ranks are all about potential, Morgan. And now that I'm here, I may as well be of use while I'm here, right? I'm glad you understand. You've already proved yourself quite a capable esper for all that you lack training. I'm not a soldier, Magnus. I hope you realize that. He let out a soft, hollow laugh. None of us are. I didn't know what that was supposed to mean, and he didn't elaborate. He returned to the desk, but didn't sit. He leaned against it, as he had been when I arrived. But none of this is why I wanted to speak with you alone. Then why? What else is there to say? I looked into your records, of course. I'm sure you can imagine I saw some interesting things in your history. You're referring to the fact I tested positive as an esper as a child? But you seemingly had none of the physiological traits. Yet here you are. I assume you've heard of fairy espers? I knew it. So it wasn't just me having that kind of thought. I have. My ex-boyfriend was interested in researching them, so I'm aware their genetic markers and forensic systems differ from nano-espers. Trent Erickson, correct? How did you know that? His records show he shared your address for around 6 months. That was over a year ago, prior to his leaving for Cyre. It's an interesting connection. I was rather surprised to discover it. What does that mean? Mr. Erickson is one of a few researchers who will come here to the headquarters in a few weeks to have a look at our research archives. Trent is coming here? He is scheduled to, but of course, I suppose it depends on how the situation on Cyre continues to evolve. At any rate, that's beside the point for now. Was Mr. Erickson aware you were an esper? He was the only one who was. And was he the one who surmised you may be a fairy esper? It came up, but neither of us knew my rank. We thought I was at best a low-level infantry. He believed it was possible that because I tested positive before we knew that much information on F-class espers, they wouldn't have known what to check for, so I managed to escape detection. Even now, with more information on them, fairies can escape detection. We still don't have a method to consistently identify them. By the time the methods we do have were publicly available, you'd have fallen through the cracks. That was Trent's theory as well, assuming I am an F-class. It took multiple attempts, but Dr. Sasaki had confirmed it personally. I'm sure you can imagine his interest. Ugh. I could imagine it, actually. I'm confused why you had to tell me all this in private, though. Because we don't know the full extent of your skill set. Fairies often have abilities which fall outside the skills of nano-espers. Their abilities are much more driven by emotion, so they're considered less stable, unpredictable. You aren't the only one in Endgame, nor the only one in the Guard, but I would encourage you not to broadcast your status to others. Or what? I wasn't sure I wanted to ask. I wonder who else in the Guard was in F-Class, though if Magnus was telling me to keep it a secret, they must do the same. Does that mean there's some kind of rift between F-Class and N-Class espers? Ugh, just what I needed. At any rate, there's the end of the difficult things for now. Moving on to other subjects. You'll begin training as soon as I've decided on a personal instructor for you. We'll issue you a uniform, a training schedule. And you can think of a code name for yourself as well. A code name? What a sudden change of subject. Correct. Other king-ranked espers can monitor even our secure communication channels, and we don't always want Crimson to know who is being sent where. Besides, they sound fun, don't they? Do you want to guess what mine is? Not really. I can't imagine how I'd have any idea what it could be. You're almost as little fun as Caleb. Are you comparing me with him to annoy me? Is it working? Yes. He laughed and came to me, crouching in front of where I was sitting. I think we'll get on well, and you'll find yourself fitting in here in no time at all. Stick close to your guard, Morgan. They'll keep you safe, teach you what you need to know, and help you find your way here. He straightened again. I believe Vanessa said she'd be giving you a tour of the facility today. Ah, yes. Make sure she shows you everything. Have fun! The way he switched from unassuming and teasing to serious and then back again made my head spin. My dad was a bit like that. He was also so serious and focused when working, but it was a bit of a prankster with the rest of the time. But with Magnus, it was particularly dramatic. I wasn't sure what to make of him. Magnus dismissed me as soon after, and I found Vanessa waiting for me outside his office. I think she could tell I was overwhelmed because she suggested something to eat before our tour, and we soon found ourselves heading to the lounge. Yeah, the Jack situation is tough. I know you probably think Caleb is some horrible guy, but a lot of the reasons he's so frustrated has to do with Jack. They were friends for years before Jack left the group, studied under the same mentor, planned to make first guard together, then Jack left. Obviously, Kale felt betrayed, and let's just say he holds grudges. He gets cranky when Jack manages to pop up again. I'm sure he's also relieved every time we find out Jack's still alive. And that probably makes him angrier. Sounds like they have a complicated relationship. Well, it's not your fault either way, so don't worry about it. I hope Magnus didn't unnerve you too much. He can be a little eccentric. I've met Stranger, to be honest. Oh? And where were you meeting all these eccentrics? School? Don't sound so surprised. Some of my professors were more than a little eccentric. And classmates. I have a hard time imagining a bunch of school kids in New Albion were so eccentric. Just because everyone becomes eccentric after a few weeks of no sleep because of an upcoming exam. Van had a way of making everything feel normal and manageable again. Spending some time talking to her was a relief. Are you ready to take the tour I promised? This was the first place I was going to bring you anyway. The lounge? Hey, we avoided coming here last night, but when we don't want to cook for ourselves, we usually have dinner here. It's good to know where basic things like this are. I suppose you're right. There's a larger mess hall in the lower levels, but mostly low-ranked agents eat there. Well, the food down here and there is free. Here you have to pay. Hey, Van, showing the newbie queen around the place? Well, we've been getting a lot of stares since we arrived, which I assumed was because people probably knew who I was. No one else had approached us, until these two youngish-looking people decided to come over. Both wore white, black, and gray uniforms. Yes, I am, but she has a name, and it isn't Newbie Queen, so maybe learn it and start using it. Sorry, I did read the report. It's Morgan Leon. And I'm Birdie, and this is Casey. It's nice to meet you two. They look younger than me, maybe in their mid-20s, so I guess they're teenagers. How are you liking Endgame so far? I don't know yet, really. I've spent most of my time here in the medical ward. These two are still junior agents. Casey is a bishop, while Bertie is a rook. That's impressive. I know ranked agents work hard here. You're the one who's impressive. I heard you unleashed a psi blast which destroyed an entire city block. That's why you were in the medical ward for so long, right? I would call that a slight exaggeration. Correct. She only knocked down a single building. Thank you, Van. That's amazing. It was actually terrifying. I wish I could have seen it. I still struggle with even small psi blasts. You can't see her, but my puppy dog has just come in and is now sitting on the couch. Hello, sweetheart. How are you doing? You having a good day? Yeah, you having a good day? I'm so glad. I wish I could have seen it. I still struggle with even small psi blasts and bursts. Only because you need more practice. Not all bishops specialize in telekinesis like you. I know. That's why I trounced you in our match last week. Hey, pitting me against a member of the guard was not fair. Again, your problem. Anyway, Morgan, let's get out of here. And if these two are here, there's a whole flock of little baby agents about to descend on this place. And unless you want to deal with 50 of them gushing over you... I definitely did not want to deal with a flock of baby agents. It was nice to meet you, Casey, Bertie. You too. And if you ever need anything, you can always ask. I'd be happy to help. There's one thing that you can help with is the rumor about Morgan blowing up a city block. There's already enough buzz going around because we found a queen rank. Let's not let things get out of hand. Bertie laughed and rubbed the back of her neck awkwardly. Will do. Sorry about that. Another group of very young and fresh-faced agents came in right as Van and I were leaving. She positioned herself between them and me on our way out, and while none of them spoke to us, I could hear the whispers. After that, Van took me to several other places. The training room, the garden, the lobby, so on. Everywhere we went, people stared. A few people approached to say hi. There were quite a few introductions. All names and faces I instantly forgot. Yup. I was pretty tired by the time I got back to my room. Almost as soon as I was in the door, I received a net notification. It was a schedule for the upcoming week. Mostly medical exams. But there was something scheduled 3 days from now which caught... Let's see if I can... We have a Doge. Hello, Doge. Hello, beautiful girl. Hello, beautiful girl. Yes. Alright, let's get my camera back in place. There we go. Ugh. Okay. I'm playing a game. You can stay and listen if you want. Alright. There was something scheduled 3 days from now which caught my eye. My first training session. The room and time were listed, as well as the name of the person Magnus chose as my teacher. Ari Vaughn. I flopped on my sofa and let out a soft groan. Fairy Queen, huh? I shut my eyes, and by the time I started to doze off, my door chimed. I bolted upright groggily, calling for whoever it was to enter before I was fully awake. It didn't occur to me until the door opened and Ari stepped inside that I left most of my clothes strewn on the floor when I'd come in from the tour earlier. I was still half sprawled on the sofa, hair a mess. The very picture of a responsible and capable adult. It took several seconds of us staring at each other before I processed who it even was. He came further into the apartment, his gaze landing on the pile of clothes on the floor in front of him. After a space, he bent to pick them up. Sorry, I was exhausted when I came back with Van earlier. You don't have to clean those up. I apologize for waking you. Perhaps I should have sent a message instead. I bit back a yawn. No, it's fine. I shouldn't be sleeping during the day anyway. I'll throw off my sleep schedule. Perhaps, but you're also still recovering. Rest is important. Ari draped my shirt over his arm and set my boots off to the side before bringing the clothes to the sofa. I somehow wasn't surprised he was a neat freak. He had that feel to him, you know? Like he'd casually straighten up someone else's apartment just because he was there. He laid the clothes on the arm of the sofa. I wanted to inform you Magnus had asked me to oversee your training for the time being. All business, as usual. I got the schedule update. We'll be starting in 3 days, right? Correct. Bishop skills are a little more difficult to master and are more taxing on the mind. Magnus still wants someone who can help you with skills he believes will be easier for you to learn. Though biokinesis is easiest for most people, you've already demonstrated the ability to mimic my skills. So, biokinesis, a form of telekinesis that involves manipulating organic matter on a macro and micro level. The resulting effect is that biokinetics can enhance their physical bodies in a variety of ways, including the way they process sensory input, to the effect of enhancing sensory perception, enhancing physical capabilities, or even cellular regeneration. Alright. It could show an aptitude for night-based skills. Since you don't get on with Caleb, focusing in this area might be a good starting point. I understand. Hi, Scotty. Hi, sweetie. We likely won't be focusing on psi ability yet, as I doubt Dr. Sasaki will clear you for it by the time we begin, but every one of us does physical training and meditation as part of our regime. We'll be starting there for you as well. These activities won't tax your mind. In fact, the meditation techniques we'll teach you are likely to help you recover faster. My goals for your physical training, at least for the time being, will be centered on self-defense. Even as telekinetics, it's important to learn to protect ourselves without the use of our abilities. As we do sometimes encounter opponents who make use of psi inhibitors, we can't always rely on psi abilities to get us out of dangerous situations. I see. That makes sense. I guess I'll see you then? Did Van make dinner plans with you tonight? No, we didn't discuss it before she left. Are you feeling up to a dinner in the lounge? I don't know. It's been a long day. I'll bring something to you, and you can eat it in the privacy of your flat. I'm sure it'll be more comfortable. Thank you. You don't have to go out of your way, though. Magnus has suggested we do what we can to facilitate your adjustment. Though I think it would eventually be best for you to spend time among other agents. I understand it's currently difficult for you to do so. It's just orders. I should have known. It makes more sense to help ensure your comfort as you recover and familiarize yourself with the building. I understand. Thank you. He nodded and let himself out without asking how I was doing or how the tower was. As far as interactions with Ari went, it could have been worse. I flopped backward again. Today felt like it had been the start of a new journey. I didn't know if it would be a bad one or a good one, but all I could do was hope for the best. Chapter 4. Falling down and getting back up. In the next few weeks... Oh, her outfit changed. Nice. In the next few weeks, I want to take you around Brazil, show you some of the best places to eat or spend time. They're actually going to let me out of the compound? You're not a prisoner, Morgan. I keep telling you that. I mean, they'll want you to have an escort when we go out, but just so you're aware, Magnus never leaves without an escort either. I can't help but think going everywhere with a chaperone sounds like so much fun. If I'm your escort, it will be the most fun you've ever had. Thank you very much. When we reached the training room, Van was escorting me to my first training session with Ari. There was a small crowd gathered there. A few were near the door, but most were along the walls watching the sparring match going on in the center of the room. I can't believe Caleb talked Ari into this before his session with you. How early did those two get here? What makes you think Caleb instigated this? I trailed off when she looked at me. Okay, point taken. But the two of them sparring like that... Oh boy, yeah. Caleb was no surprise, but I didn't expect Ari to be that fit. My eyes followed his movements as Ari blocked a kick. It was easy to see why they gathered an audience. Watching two sweaty, attractive guys practice isn't all that bad, I guess. So, like I mentioned yesterday, this is where a lot of us who have named ranks do our training. Uh-huh. I didn't know how much about this sort of thing, but there appeared to be several styles of fighting going on at once. Prior to joining the safety department, Wayne had studied martial arts as well. I'd watched him spar with his classmates before. They did a lot of bouncing at each other without ever throwing a punch or kick. Caleb and Ari were not like that. It was intense for a sparring match, and if they were pulling the punches, it didn't seem to be by much. Caleb seemed to have the upper hand, though. I caught snatches of conversation around me and wasn't surprised that most of those watching were rooting for Ari. Poor Caleb. Van leaned in closer. Most here are upper-level infantry and ranked junior agents. Lower-level infantry are all housed in a different location. Same for non-agents, like researchers and such. Oh, Ari almost got him right there. He managed to hook his foot around Caleb's leg and nearly swept him onto his back. But Caleb twisted away and responded with a solid kick that Ari only just blocked. The training rooms up here are also better enforced, so it makes sense that those with stronger abilities come up here. So, which one do you think is better looking? Huh? Van's laugh was loud enough to draw several looks as I whipped my head around and glared at her. Well, you're watching them pretty closely. I didn't think you were even listening to me. I was listening. Sort of. I was just thinking it's a bit intimidating. They don't seem to be going easy on each other. They never do. Oh! I winced as Caleb somehow got his arms around Ari's waist, and in one smooth twist and throw, they were both on the ground. Ari hit first, though, and while Caleb jumped back to his feet, Ari lay there for a moment, winded. Ouch. Well, that's usually how it goes. Physical combat is Caleb's specialty, after all. As Ari rolled over and got back to his feet, the people watching from the side swarmed the mat. Some congratulated Caleb, while others helped Ari to his feet. You never answered my question. Which one's better looking? The one that doesn't usually have a look on his face like he wants to murder me in my sleep. In any case, they both seem to have a lot of fans. Well, the guard is made up of the elite of the elites, so people look up to us. I guess there's a little celebrity that comes with the job. I'm sure you'll get a little fan club going. Bertie looked ready to polish your shoes if you asked. No, thank you. I swear, you are no fun at all. I wasn't sure how I felt about the thought of a fan club. I was just weird. When I looked back to Ari, I realized Van and I had been spotted. Our eyes met, and he squeezed his way out of the group of people, assuring him his sparring was amazing. That alerted everyone else we were there, and a little murmur ran through the room. Caleb looked our way, and they proceeded to ignore us. Not that I was was at all surprised by that. Ari joined us by the door, rotating one shoulder slightly, the one that had taken the brunt of his fall when Caleb threw him. Alright, so we've got two choices. We've got, that was a good match, with Caleb, and affectionate. Is your shoulder alright? I'm getting the feeling that we should probably go with the affectionate one, since this is the first affectionate option that we've gotten so far. Affectionate. Is your shoulder alright? Is your shoulder alright? Sparring always results in bumps and bruises. I will recover quickly. As you are aware, we all have bioenhancements that accelerate our healing. That's not what I was asking. He gave me a confused look, lifting one eyebrow. I wasn't asking if your shoulder was going to be okay. I asked if it was okay right now. It isn't, seriously. Are you in pain, Ari? That's what she wants to know. Ah. My shoulder's a little sore, but it's not a cause of concern. It looked like a pretty bad throw. Caleb is not gentle when sparring. Remind me to never spar with Caleb. That would be wise for the time being. Or for forever. There will come a time when you'll be able to best him in a sparring match if you're both using your abilities. That? I hadn't considered this as a possibility. I have to admit, that sounds very tempting. Vanessa snickered. Glad you found some motivation. I'm also glad that motivation is kicking Caleb's ass. It has a nice sort of poetic justice to it. So is that, so that really is her? The question wasn't directed at us, but they said it loud enough we all heard it. I instinctively turned my head toward the nearby group looking our way. Seriously? She looks a little... There was a small titter of laughter in response to something said low enough I couldn't hear. So there are these kinds of people here as well. If you're curious, why don't you ask instead of standing off to the side whispering to yourselves like little kids? The group went dead quiet at the call out. Caleb hardly spared a glance at as he started out of the training room with a Caleb tossed over his shoulder. He tossed himself over his shoulder. He started out of the training room with a towel tossed over his shoulder. And I don't know what you brats think she looks like, but you should know looks have nothing to do with ability. And from what I've seen, most of you wouldn't want to go against her even when she gets even a bit of training. Did he just defend me? Kayla's right. If you're curious, you kids can just ask, you know. One girl at the front of the group looked me up and down again, then folded her arms over her chest. So you're the new queen, right? I wasn't confident claiming that title, but somehow with her staring at me like that, I lifted my chin slightly. Yes, I am. Heidi's an upper-level infantry. She graduated and joined the newest group of junior agents recently, one of the top in her class, despite not having a named rank. I'll get myself promoted to named rank soon enough. Is that possible, to go from infantry to a named rank? You don't even know that much? Unlike the rest of you, Morgan hasn't been privy to the inner workings of Endgame long enough to know the details of how our ranks work. Oh, right, of course. It's easy to forget she's new despite her age. Hey, don't say it like I'm old or something. Upper-level infantry can raise their skills high enough to get promoted to a named rank. It just takes some hard work. She cast a sidelong look at Ari's way, and sometimes special training. Training isn't always enough for someone to raise their scores high enough to become eligible for a psi expansion. You never know until you try. Perhaps. If you'll excuse me, Morgan and I have a training session scheduled. Morgan? He mentioned me towards the other side of the room. Coming. I shot an awkward smile at the junior agents clustering nearby. There was definitely a hidden meaning to that exchange, wasn't there? Heidi stared after Ari, but looked back at me before starting out of the room. When I get promoted to queen... Wow, someone thinks highly of themselves. When I get promoted to queen rank, I look forward to having a few matches with you. I heard about that psi blast of yours. I can't wait to see it myself. The rest of the junior agents filed out of the room after Heidi. I thought Birdie intended to do something about those rumors. Why do I feel like I might be stepping on some toes by being here? Don't worry about it, Morgan. There's no guarantee she's even capable of achieving queen rank. Do you know how hard that is? No, I don't. I don't know anything about any of this. Fair enough. For the record, it's incredibly difficult. Very few infantry have the flexibility to get promoted at all. It's not like they just sign up for psi expansion and hope for the best. They have to focus on raising very specific aspects of their psi ability to certain levels. For someone aiming at rook or knight or bishop, it's one thing. For something like queen rank, where they have to master all those areas, I think she's years away from it, even if it's even possible. A psi expansion. So basically a nano expansion that targets an increased psi ability? I didn't know that was possible. As you can imagine, we don't broadcast that it is. Not that it stops illegal attempts anyway. It's quite dangerous. It's not like expansions that reinforce body systems like a bio-expansion or your neural enhancements. I guess if it were easy, they'd be creating espers in a lab somewhere. Most likely. But if you tried to give one of these expansions to a normal person, you'd probably kill them. So don't feel bad about being here. Queen promotion isn't easy to achieve. It's not something you can just do because you want to. Then why does she want to if it's so dangerous? Why does anyone want a promotion in their job? The pay is better, the privileges are better, you get more respect, more attention. It doesn't seem worth it to me. This is a big organization, Morgan, and most of the espers in it are infantry. They all want to stand out. I mean, look at Caleb and Ari. They were just blowing off steam and gathered an audience to watch. People like the attention, the clout. Promotion is one way they can get those things. It made sense there was that kind of thing going on as well, but somehow I hadn't expected it. Endgame always seemed, well, above it all. Oh, is everything alright? It's almost time for us to begin. Sorry, coming. Thanks for walking me down here, Van. I appreciate it. Don't worry about it. I'll catch up to you later. Have a good session. I couldn't help the flicker of apprehension as I joined Ari on the other side of the room. I still wish they had chosen Vanessa to work with me. Her jokes and teasing always set me at ease. With Ari, I could never tell what he was thinking. We won't be doing anything strenuous today. There's no need to look so anxious. Is it that obvious? You tend to express your feelings rather openly on your face. Doesn't everyone? That's kind of the point of them, isn't it? It didn't take anything more than the raised eyebrow for me to get the point. He didn't tend to relay much via facial expression anyway. Well, I'm glad to know I'm an open book. It does make interacting with you a little easier. Not sure how I feel about that. He positioned himself across from me, but within arm's reach. For today, I want to demonstrate the proper way to warm up for a physical workout. I'd also like to observe your strength levels and stamina so it can create a proper training regime for you. And maybe the very basics of self-defense. At the end, I'll show you some meditative techniques I'd like you to work on in your spare time. I already do know some self-defense techniques, just for the record. Is that so? One of my brothers is a public service officer. Since I was the only girl, they were all a bit protective. He and my dad taught me a few things. We used to go jogging together before he moved out, but that was a few years ago. That's good to know. I'm glad there's a foundation to start from, but we'll follow my plan for today so I can see exactly where you are. I understand. Now for warm-up, we can start with stretches and follow with some light cardiovascular exercise. He's placed his right hand on the back of his opposite arm, lifting them both over his head and twisting his body slightly. Okay. From his slight nod, I gathered he wanted me to mirror his movements. Warming up is necessary to avoid injury. We'll spend the first 15 minutes doing stretches every day. I'm sorry, but from, like, this description of, like, right hand on the back of opposite arm... Okay. I was just imagining him, like, contorting himself in just, like, a weird way and being like, yes, copy me as I contort. Alright, just follow my movements. The stretching part was fine. I wasn't terribly flexible or anything, but he wasn't expecting me to be a contortionist. It was when we moved into the light cardiovascular exercise that I realized I'd gotten a little out of shape in the last year or so. The fact Ari was observing me made me extra self-conscious. Fortunately, his warm-up only lasted for about half an hour. He seems mostly pleased with my performance, but noted my stamina was a little low. I hope you realize I'm a student. I did spend a lot of time studying, not fighting off mafia people. It wasn't a criticism, merely an observation. We'll focus efforts on improving that as we go forward. This is a highly physical job most of the time. In addition, increasing your physical stamina will also increase your ability to use psi without the danger of psi fatigue. Stamina training. Fun. For now, we'll be moving to something else. Meditation will be a part of our cooldown at the end of the session, but for now, I want to teach you one of the most important principles of handling yourself in a physical confrontation. And I want you to practice this every session going forward. You consider it the foundation for all our self-defense training. And that is falling. Falling? Blocking, balance stance, or anything else would have made more sense. More precisely, I want to show you how to fall safely. He took a few steps back from me. In any confrontation, there is a risk of falling. Being thrown, being knocked down, it's unavoidable. As such, it's important that you be able to fall without injuring yourself. If you fall with the right amount of grace, you can get up and continue to fight. Almost sounds like a metaphor for life. Perhaps it is. My mentor once said learning to fall means learning to view the situation objectively, thus gaining insight from each failure. This allows you to accept what happened, get up, and continue on. If you fall poorly, you'll end up hurt. Worse, you'll lie where you are and lose your fight. Are we even talking about fighting anymore? It felt more like he was using this lesson as an opportunity to tell me it was time to accept the situation and move on. And well, I was trying. I was here, not moping in my room, wasn't I? Morgan? Is something troubling you? Sorry. It's just... It feels a little like we stopped talking about self-defense somewhere along the way. There are many principles that can apply to more than just confrontations. But at this moment, we are simply discussing how to fall without physically injuring yourself. Got it. Sorry for getting distracted. Then, let's keep going? Yes. For the first thing to remember is that when something falls, the more area of impact it has, the less damage it receives. Oh, cool. Oh, for those who can't see the chat, Rev just added in, I guess I was going to guess fall breaking. I learned in fall contact at LARPing. I did a few workshops in stage combat, and I've also done live steel combat, and one of the most important things that you can go and learn is how to go and fall safely and have essentially safe failures. So it's a very important lesson. Alright. For us, that means our back is the largest and safest area to direct a fall. It sounds simple enough. I'll do a quick demonstration for the first technique we will learn. He continued to speak as he showed a very precise fall that looked more like rolling onto his back from crouching than slapping the mat with both hands. He jumped back to his feet. It will be tempting to catch yourself on your hands, but with the sudden impact to your arm can cause severe injury to the wrist and shoulders. We have enhanced regeneration, but the middle of a confrontation is not where you want to be nursing an injured wrist or shoulder. He sidled beside me, almost cradling his body against his as he gently pushed the back of my head to make me look down. Tuck your chin to your chest so you don't slam your head on the ground as you fall. These techniques are meant to protect you, so there's no point if they do more harm than good due to improper methodology. I was trying to focus on his words, but the sensation of his fingers against the back of my neck sent a little shiver through me. Calm down, Morgan. Good grief. He's teaching you a weird falling method, not trying to seduce you. The first time you do it, I'll be here to ensure you fall gently as you get a feel for the motion. And don't simply drop from this height. You want to bend your legs and drop from a lower height. I think I understand. Thankfully, he finally moved away, keeping one hand on my shoulder. Now, do it as I showed you. I'm right here to catch you if it looks like you need it. I'm supposed to be falling. Catching me seems counterproductive. Perhaps. But it's easier to fall when you know there's someone to help you get back up, isn't there? I suppose it is. My first fall attempt was a little awkward. And so was the second. I felt silly doing nothing but falling over and over, especially under Ari's watchful instruction. But he was only ever helpful, showing me things like how to stand back up without letting my hands touch the mat, or the proper position for my legs at the end of my fall. After he decided I'd gotten the hang of falling onto my back, he showed me another technique that involved falling more on my side. That one was much trickier, and I still felt awkward when it was with it, even when he decided to move on. By the time we stopped, I was sweating, despite we weren't doing anything that hard. We took a quick break after a little over half an hour. Ari had sought ahead and had 2 flasks of water waiting for us on the side. I am going to take that as a moment to have a drink of water myself. He handed me one without a word, taking the other one for himself. I drank it gratefully, watching him out of the corner of my eye. There was a thin sheet of sweat on his forehead, but I suspected it was because it was just warm in the room. That couldn't have functioned as any sort of real workout for him. His eyes really are a strange color, aren't they? That had to be due to fade. I heard it could affect eye color as well. Ari looked my way. I flushed and averted my gaze. I hadn't meant to stare. It wasn't like I'd gotten a good look at him a dozen times already. Is everything alright? It's fine. We're going to work on meditation, right? Or is there more falling and getting back up to be done? I thought it would be best to end with meditation, yes. Does everyone here use meditation to help with their abilities? Not everyone needs it, but it's encouraged. I use it to help me maintain focus. Utilizing long-range teleportation abilities can be dangerous. It requires very precise clairvoyant reach. I believe it'll help you as well. Queens require great flexibility in thinking and a general understanding of many other kinds of psi. Mimicking different skills can be difficult to master, and the mind strain can be immense. So besides being put in dangerous situations, I'll also have to deal with the fact that just using my psi ability can be dangerous. Our jobs are dangerous, but mitigating that danger is the purpose of this training. Is something bothering you? Not at all. I'm fine with training to prepare myself for the immense strain of doing this job. You were under immense strain during your studies, were you not? That's not the same thing. Is this not just another form of study? I was studying archaeology. This is studying to do some dangerous job I'd never imagined I'd be doing. As I recall from your records, wasn't your goal to go off-world to conduct research? And? I assume fieldwork is often done in dangerous locations where there are harsh conditions. Surely excavation sites aren't always safe either. Of course it's not without danger. This job, as well, is not without danger. In that, not much about your situation has changed. Alright. Analytical. I guess I didn't really think of it that way, or I still don't think it's the same. It kind of is in some ways, considering that they've gone and described, like, how dangerous this world can be in terms of, like, outside of certain biodomes. So, especially if she's trying to go off-world. So, I guess I didn't really think of it that way. Always good to think of things from a different perspective. I guess I didn't really think of it that way. Maybe it feels different because the dangers of uncovering historical sites aren't as in your face. I'm not sure I understand what you mean. There's a difference between a situation where you might encounter something dangerous and where you might encounter someone actively trying to harm you. Look, I took a rock climbing class 2 years ago. It was right at the edge of the wastes. There's a city there called High-Wraith that houses several small natural cliffs. Alright, High-Wraith, a small city on the edge of the Twilight regions. It's built directly into some cliffs, and it's known for its rock climbing and the naturalistic culture and lifestyle promoted in the city. It's non-aligned and largely self-sufficient. It's a popular vacation spot for people from more populated domes. I laughed slightly, shaking my head at the memory. I thought it would be helpful if I ever managed to get off the world. I mean, you never know what you encounter. Anyway, there were safety lines and everything, but it's not like there was no danger at all. And in a way, the fact there was a little dangerous made it more exciting, but it wasn't like the rocks were trying to kill me. Can you not learn to see this job as exciting? I don't know. On that trip, there was this moment I was scaling a nearly vertical rock face, and at one point, my foot slipped, but I managed to hang on and keep climbing. And when I reached the top and saw how far I climbed, there was a wonderful sense of accomplishment. I don't know that I can ever feel that way from beating up someone else. Our job does not involve only beating people up, Morgan. We protect people as well, and we help this planet continue to function peacefully. I believe you may find that you feel a similar sense of accomplishment from realizing you kept someone safe in a dangerous situation. It is an erroneous assumption that all we do is fight or try to avoid being killed by other people. To be fair, my introduction to all this involved a significant amount of fighting and people shooting at me. I can see how that might have given you a distorted view of what it means to be here. But remember that you are not alone. None of us is. We work in teams, and your team includes people who will be quite determined to keep you safe. This job is dangerous, perhaps differently from what you're prepared for, but that is the purpose of this training, to prepare you. Just like your studies, just like your rock climbing class. It's just hard to maintain sight of that when people keep talking about the danger aspect. For the time being, simply focus on the task before you. During the rest of the session, we'll be... He stopped abruptly and tilted his head away from me. His eyes went far away, fixing on a point somewhere across the room. I knew that look well. He was getting a message from someone else. It took a few minutes before he looked at me again. It seems we'll have to cut the session short. I apologize, but my presence is required elsewhere. Is everything okay? It's nothing you should worry about. Just work. We must reserve working on meditation techniques for tomorrow. All right, I understand. In the meantime, you should shower and relax. You worked hard today. We'll resume the lesson tomorrow at the same time. He picked up his things and left quickly. I watched him go, wondering what was so urgent that he had to ditch our lesson like that. After a moment, I left the training room again, heading to my flat for a shower. After cleaning up, I decided to go to the lounge for dinner. I was still iffy about the stares and whispers, but I couldn't stay holed up in my flat forever. Van was right. This was home now. The lesson with Ari had taken an unexpected turn as well. I hadn't expected life lessons on falling and moving forward. But whether or not he intended it, the message was clear. And it helped put our things in perspective. I would have to adapt. And even if I was a little self-conscious on my own, dinner at the lounge turned out fine. I saw Bertie and Casey again, and they chatted for a while. That was nice. The two of them were fun to be around. I spent the entire evening laughing at their antics. The only dark spot to the evening after they left, and even then, it wasn't that bad. A group of junior agents had come in, one of them being that girl from earlier in the morning, the one who wanted a queen promotion. I almost confronted them when I heard them snickering and looking my way. It was so ridiculous for them to act that way, but I had to remind myself that they were younger than me. But not by much, but by enough. It showed in their actions. And then I felt sad that such young kids were out in the field doing a dangerous job. I didn't have the heart to say anything to them after that. Eventually I found myself standing at the window with a cup of tea in my hand, looking over Brazil and listening to the quiet murmur of voices around me. I didn't expect to see you out and about for a while. Not alone, anyhow. I stiffened at the sound of Caleb's voice, but didn't object when he joined me at the window. I can't stay in my room forever. Can't argue with that. Oh, there's something you can't argue with? That's a surprise. Looks like Van's already started to rub off on you in the most annoying ways. I just laughed at his irritation. He must have been too bothered by me being annoying, though, because he didn't leave. How'd training go today? It was fine, but we didn't quite make it to the end. Ari was called away before we could finish, so it was cut a little short. Well, he's in high demand, so I guess that's not a shock. High demand? Do you know where they called him to? Who knows? They're always wanting him to teleport people to various places around. Half the time he's treated like a transport instead of an agent. It's shitty work, but he never complains, so they keep asking it of him. Just Ari? It's not like he's the only knight around here. Only one with the range he's got. He took a sip from his cup, eyes focused somewhere in the distance. I feel bad that he has to deal with me on top of all that now. Don't. If he doesn't like it, he can say so. Ari would never say anything, even if he didn't like it. Idiot. Never complains about anything, even when he should. I don't think that makes him an idiot. If you feel bad about it, work hard so it's worthwhile for him to put time into training you. I guess that's the most practical way to look at it. And the next time he gets called away early, you can always ask someone else to take over. Ari's not the only member of your guard. You're volunteering then? Better than having you toss another building at me because you don't know what the hell you're doing out there. That makes more sense. What's that mean? You almost sounded like you were being nice, so I was a little confused. Shut the hell up. I laughed at him again. You'll never let me live down that building thing, will you? Maybe when you get over the kidnapping thing. Fair enough. We stood there quietly for a long time, looking over Brazil before I got back to my room, feeling lighter than before. Everything really would be okay, after all. I was certain. Alright, we've gotten to the chapter 5 of this, and I think we're at the point where I am going to call it for today, but I do have something fun that I will be doing next week. I have gotten full access to Terra Nil before it has become fully released. So what my current plan is Monday evening, I will be doing a live stream of the full Terra Nil game so that you guys can go and check it out. So make sure that you tune back in for that. I'm so excited to go and show it to you guys. And then we will be continuing with Gilded Shadows as usual on Thursday. So thank you so much for going and tuning in. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye, friends!